Hello, my friends. My name is Justice Knight, filling in for Lisa Haven, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to bring you this message today. Before I get into it, because I will not stop anybody who's watched me before, I hope if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, Justice Knight, you will, or subscribe to my website at justiceaidknight.com. My videos will appear, both of them. Now we got to jump into this because I've been waiting to give you this message. The letter on your screen, this is recently just surfaced from a private collection. It was a letter written by George Washington prior to him being president that reminds us, especially nowadays, this is especially critical, the foundation of God in our nation and how important that was to our founding fathers and how hard this globalist cabal is trying to assure it is shredded out of everything that exists. It's trying to not only assure that God is removed, but our Constitution is destroyed. So as we circle back at the end of our broadcast to this letter and the words that George Washington uses, it becomes especially prophetic today in the times that we are facing in this political turmoil. But let's just build up to that point. What's happening today? As you all know, we are under full attack from Facebook, from Google, from Twitter, from the Democrats, from anybody else who has a message against the Constitution. You'll see here under free speech, Mafic CEO hosts slam Facebook's unprovoked censorship after CNN report. This headline, Twitter censoring conservatives is worse than it appears. These are horrible censorships of free speech directly against our Constitution. But nonetheless, they don't stop. Follow what Google's doing. Google, we talked about this in the Dragonfly Project and helping China to build this huge censorship mainframe. Google shareholders join outcry over potential China censorship. But if that wasn't bad enough, Google also is working with Russia. And guess what? The Russian, as this title says, Google satisfied Russian regulator over censorship demands. Well, how did they do that? Because they censored the information in the search feature according to what the Russian government wants their people to see. And that is all too much a reality for us with everything we're allowing. Because if they control the argument, they control the agenda. If they control the news, they control the opinion. So what's happening is they are taking our Constitution, shredding it up in front of us, throwing it in the garbage can, and making sure that you only hear their message, because you'll never be able to formulate an argument if you don't have both sides, both opinions. It's why our forefathers left the freedom of speech everywhere within the Constitution to assure that was never lost. Dems to strike, so help you God from the oaths. Remember when I talked about the removal of God? We've seen it with currency. Now we're seeing it with the very oaths that are being given to the House committees. Removing God because nobody wants any to have to report to a higher power that they can't control. That would be absolutely against anything our forefathers said, right? Oh, my friends, wait till you hear the quotes from the president and the presidents prior to Trump, and also George Washington himself, and how they bring God back into the equation. Moving forward quickly, though, campus free speech bill to become law. Well, guess what? The campus has said, hey, if you want to protest, you can protest over there in that corner next to that statue. And, if you want free speech, by the way, we have a zone over there. Just go down the hallway to your left through the side door, right into the broom closet, and you could have your free speech. But we gave you free speech, right? No, you're treading on the Constitution. Thank goodness some of the states are starting to come up with documentation against this practice. Our education system is enough dismantled. Now you're going to remove a whole conservative speech movement? That's ridiculous and should never be allowed. Our forefathers would be rolling over in their graves. And then you get this, another direct attack on the Constitution. Democratic contenders step up calls for gun control legislation following Illinois shootings, because obviously none of these candidates understand the fact that even if you banned all guns, the criminals will still have them, and the government will still have them. And the forefathers put our right to bear arms for 2, 3, or 4 specific reasons. One's to protect ourselves. 1, to protect our family. 2, to protect against foreign invaders. And 3, guess what, folks? To protect against our government in case they should turn on us. Yeah, that's the Constitution. Love it or leave it. Because those were the principles our forefathers set forth. And how are these Democratic hopefuls going to just go ahead and step up gun control legislation as a buzzword? Oh my gosh, the dangers that we face right now. At least 20 abortion cases are in the pipeline to the Supreme Court. Anyone could gut Roe versus Wade. The very foundations of human life. God created life under continual attack. The deplorable nature of what I've seen lately, it's hard to stomach at times. It's hard to swallow. We weren't the only ones to have to face this, though. President Ronald Reagan, if you read his quote here, the real question today is not when human life begins. This is directly from Ronald Reagan. But what is the value of human life? Jumping down in the quote. The real question for him and for all of us is whether that tiny human life has a God-given right to be protected by the law, the same right we have. Reagan reaches out in a time of crisis, in a time of decision, reaches back to our forefathers and to God and brings them back into the equation. Because he understands, like our forefathers did, that no matter how big the building, no matter how strong the building, if you remove the foundation of God, the building will crumble. It will collapse. And that is exactly what these globalists are attempting to do. You take one of the worst times in U.S. history, the Civil War, and you read the Gettysburg Address, as many of us have so many times. And let's just take the beginning and the end. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Jumping forward to the very end, just the last few sentences, that from these honored dead, we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion to their country, as all our soldiers who have died in service of this nation to protect our Constitution have given, and their families. God bless each one of you. That we were highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Once again, under God, recognizing that even in this horrible time of tragedy, human death, destruction of our nation, fighting brother versus brother, he brought God back into the equation, knowing he had that principle to lie back on. And who are we to look that in the face and completely forget it today? But let's go back even a little bit further. George Washington's letter on God and the Constitution services, this letter was lost. It was in a private collection. It had recently gone up on auction and resurfaced, and the quote that came to light is something that I'm sure the globalist cabal never wanted us to see, and definitely did not want us, the American citizen, to recognize and understand and realize that very foundation of God that we've been talking about this entire time. This was right around the time, right before George Washington became president. There was the Pennsylvania Anti-Federalist Movement. This was an early challenge to the Constitution. We'll read this here, the Pennsylvania minority in the legislature had requested that their objections be placed on the record at the time of the vote. This minority bought newspaper space and sent their objections out all over the nation. Sound familiar to what the Googles and Facebooks are doing now? Controlling the message, sending it out to the masses. This is our information against the Constitution that we want overturned. So George Washington had penned the letter, the farmer and surveyor himself, because you look at the beginning of the letter, it is all about farming. But then towards the very end, speaking of this second convention that was being formed, he states, "It would seem from the public gazettes that the minority in your state are preparing for another attack of the now adopted government. How formidable it may be, I know not. But that Providence, which has hitherto smiled on the honest endeavors of the well-meaning part of the people of this country, will not, I trust, withdraw its support from them at this crisis." So what is he speaking of there? Let's break it down real quick. It would seem from the public gazettes, those papers that this second convention had bought, the minority had purchased to speak against the Constitution, that the minority that we just mentioned in your state are preparing for another attack of the now adopted government. He is speaking directly of the Constitution, an attack on the Constitution. How formidable it may be, I know not, but that providence, he uses providence in place of God. His belief in God for the foundation, which has hitherto smiled on the honest endeavors, the creation of the Constitution. God has smiled on the creation of our nation, the foundation of our principles, the creation of the Constitution. That well-meaning part of the people of this country will not, I trust, withdraw its support from them. At this crisis, God will not draw his support away from that which he backed, that which he allowed to be created, that for which he smiled upon. This amazing nation of the United States of America, George Washington writing these words, and we need to look back on history. Not only so it doesn't repeat itself, but for those foundations that right now when everything is being shredded apart and there appears to be no reality around us, understanding that our forefathers wrote God into the Constitution and into our government for very good cause. They understood that he was the foundation that allowed for this great nation to be built, and that, my friends, we can never forget, and we cannot forget this letter, which surfaces at one of the most opportune times in American history, when our political landscape appears to be at the worst turmoil we have ever seen. We need to fall back on that foundation of God, the foundation of our forefathers, and the foundation of our Constitution to assure these attacks cease and desist. My friends, my name is Justice Knight, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, again, I hope you will. I hope if you enjoyed this video, you'll share it far and wide. People need to hear this message. It's why Lisa asked me to bring it to you today. It is so critical. And she also asked me, just, again, I get so wrapped up in things, and if you just go to this website very quick, patriotflashlight.com. An amazing sponsor of Lisa that allows her to bring this broadcast, an amazing product. And what's even more amazing is the sale that they're allowing. Now I'm going to go, and you've seen me do the technicals of this, and of course, one of the brightest flashlights I have ever seen. Safety for the car, safety in case you need anything, just like that, to flag down help. But not only that, this can also help break glass. It can help cut your seatbelt. This is an amazing safety device, unlike something I've never seen. This thing is built strong. And if you get in trouble and you want to make sure your wife is protected, that's right, an alarm that nobody's going to miss and nobody's not going to hear. But the deal they're giving you on this right now is incredible. Just go to the website you see here on your screen. Lisa will put the link below. Click on Add to Cart. You'll see the price is already down $139 down to $69. But guess what? Because you're fans of Lisa's, you get an additional discount just by plugging in Haven20. Apply the coupon code, and that price goes from $69 to $55. Now, that is an amazing deal, and not one I don't mind bringing to you at all. So those sponsors are incredible supporters to Lisa. It's important. What's even better, though, it's an amazing product. And I want to thank each of you for being here. As I always tell my audience on the way out, Godspeed and God bless. Until next time, this has been Justice Knight filling in for Lisa Haven. And Lisa, and to each of you, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Signing out.